Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again, and unfortunately, it's the last one of the season. I know this is like the favorite video on the channel. It's the power rankings across the MLB. Just want to start this video off by saying congratulations to Mr. Albert Pujols, who hit his 700th home run of his career this past week. 2 in that one game, pretty awesome. And if you enjoyed and are rooting for Albert to hit 701, 702, make sure you go down there, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, because guys, we're going to be following the baseball playoffs, the NFL season. We're going to be doing all that fun stuff across the season. And guys, we're just going to do it. The bottom row, pretty much the same as its usual. Number 30, going 2-8 over the last 10. They went 0-2 against the Yankees, 1-3 over the weekend. Just not good. Pirates are not good. Not going to say too much about it. Before I go too far in it, people that are new to the power rankings, I don't talk about the Sunday night game. This is happening before the Sunday night game. Also, right now in the 10th inning, Atlanta and Philly are in the 10th. Atlanta didn't score, so I'm expecting Philly to win, but overall it's not going to affect anything, so I might mention that dependingly. Number 29, 1-1 against Boston, 1-3 against Milwaukee. The Reds just, ever since the trade deadline, free falling. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on these bottom rows. Pretty much they're trying to play spoiler, and most of them don't. They usually go 3-7 over the last 10, 4-6 on a good week. But yeah, it's going to get a little more interesting once we start getting to the top. Number 28, Oakland A's, 2-1 against Seattle, 1-2 against the Mets. So pretty much the big story here is that they played a little bit of spoiler against Seattle. Seattle had the easiest schedule down the stretch over the last 15 games out of all the teams in the playoff race. If you wanted to kind of see a breakdown of that, make sure you go check out the video I posted last week of my predictions for the playoff race and the overall playoffs as a whole. I went over the remaining schedule of all the teams that are in the hunt, as well as making my predictions. So the A's are pretty much going to play spoiler, and they started by trying to do that against Seattle this week. 27, Washington, 2-1 against Atlanta, 1-2 against Miami. So just like a 500 week, and that's kind of been what Washington's been like ever since they traded Soto. They've been all right. They haven't been terrible. They were at the bottom row for majority of the season, but they managed to step up a couple spots, but I don't think we can see them go any further. And of course, we can't, because this is the last one. Number 26, Detroit Tigers, 2-1 against Baltimore, 3-0 against the White Sox. So pretty much put a nail in the coffin of the White Sox if the White Sox didn't do it already earlier in that week. And then they beat Baltimore earlier. So they basically beat up on the two teams that were trying to make the playoffs on the outside of the wild card looking in. Playing major spoiler. Props to the Tigers this week. Do have them in the same spot because number 25 is the Kansas City Royals. Also playing spoiler this week. 3-0 against Minnesota. 2-1 against Seattle. So pretty much combined for 5-1 week. Royals looking pretty good, and these two teams are going to meet up again. I know I've talked about them a lot over the past 2 weeks. They've just been interlocked beside each other, and they've been playing each other a lot this past month. So it's been pretty fun to watch those two teams, even though they're in that bottom row. Number 24, I think they're 3-7 in their last 10. We got Texas, 2-1 against the Angels. Got swept by Cleveland. They fell to Cleveland today, and Cleveland clinched the playoffs. We'll get to that in a bit, but overall, Texas, not too much going on for them over the past month or so. Not really been an exciting team to watch. Number 23, Miami, 1-2 against the Cubs, 2-1 against Washington. So basically, Miami's losing to the teams ahead of them and beating the team below them. It's been a pretty rough season for the Marlins. They were middle of the pack for a long time, and it's just ever since they fell down, and they haven't been able to recover. It's a division that's they're in 4th, and if anything, Washington has a better chance of catching them than they seem to have catching the person in front of them, so that's a little bit worrisome, but it's the end of the season for the Marlins. 22, Rockies, 0-4 against San Francisco, 1-2 against San Diego over the weekend here, and the Rockies pretty much cemented themselves as last place in this division, and going forward, doesn't look like an easy path for them to get out of that last place. 21, Chicago Cubs, 2-1 against Miami, 3-1 against Pittsburgh. Cubs got to be okay, pretty somewhat happy with the way this season went. They've, for a formidable opponent for the most part, they've fought hard against the top teams. They managed to beat the teams that were below them more consistently than losing. Pittsburgh, they beat up, especially this week, so they got to be happy about that. Cubs, they're definitely in rebuild mode, and we're going to be looking for them to this kind of be the floor that they're going to build off of in the next couple of seasons. Number 20, Arizona, 2-3 against the Dodgers, 1-2 against San Francisco. So after peaking up around 17, Arizona's coming a little bit back farther down to earth. They're a little bit ahead of the Rockies. They were intertwined for a lot of the season, so they started piling up, and then they kind of ran into the top of their division with the Padres, the Giants, the Dodgers over the last little bit. Kind of put them back down to earth a little bit. Diamondbacks have a ways to go. They have some key pieces, but whether they can build on it, it's going to be up for debate. Number 19, one of the biggest fallers over the past couple of weeks, Minnesota 0-3 against Kansas City, 1-2 against the Angels. I don't know what to say other than they were division leaders at 620 about halfway through the season, and now they're well below 500, and they've just been disastrously falling down the rankings. One of the biggest falls out of anyone on the rankings over the past month. Number 18, moving up a couple of spots. We got the Angels 1-2 against Texas, 2-1 against Minnesota. Don't really mean too much to move up past Minnesota. They beat them, so I kind of moved them up. They have a worse record than Minnesota. They have a worse record than maybe not the rest of the teams, but overall I do think they obviously have the all-star talent, makes them a little bit stronger than the rest. Number 17, Boston, 1-1 against Cincy, 0-3 against the Yankees over the weekend. They are playing tonight, Sunday nighter, classic Boston Yankees matchup, but they don't have a lot of things. They're not playing for much. I guess whether they can make it as close to 500 as possible by the end of the year, that's pretty much all they got. All these teams we're talking about still no shot at the playoffs. 16, same story. San Francisco 4-0 against Colorado, 2-1 against Arizona. San Francisco at least cemented that they're not as bad as the bottom two rows, and for me, that's at least a good step. They do have to figure something out because this division is going to be strong with the Padres and the Dodgers for a number of years, so they're not going to be able to keep their roster. They're going to have to make some big improvements if they're going to be in the conversation for playoffs next year. This National League's strong, and right now they're quite a ways behind getting to these top two rows, in my opinion. Number 15, and really you could argue a little bit less, 0-3 against Cleveland, 0-3 against Detroit. I think after the sweep against Cleveland, they pretty much threw in the towel against the series of Detroit. Their playoff hopes are all but finished now. With the clinch of the division to Cleveland, White Sox are completely out of it. But yeah, so they're done. Pretty much not going to hold too much about against them down the stretch here, because I think with a shot at the playoffs and then just it being cut off this late in the season, these next few games aren't going to matter too much. Number 14, we got the Baltimore Orioles. Still in the hunt, 1-2 against Detroit, 2-2 against Houston. Time is running out, though. They are 4 games back from the wild card. And they had it in their grasp. They had a 2-0 series lead on Houston, and then they had a big lead in the third game, and they just blew it, and then they lost today. So that could be the nail in the coffin. The Orioles do have one of the toughest schedules, too, down the stretch. I think they got the Yankees, Jays, Rays, maybe Boston. I know they're on tour around the American League East, which is tough, right? So got a long ways to go. They pretty much probably have to win on out here if they're going to make the playoffs. So right now they're the next team to be eliminated likely. Number 13, we got Milwaukee Brewers, 1-2 against the Mets, 3-1 against Cincy. 2 games out of the playoff spot, that wild card. Gonna have to assume that they're going to make it. Like they got to put every game counts here. They had a tough series against the Mets early, which they lost. They at least stole 1 game off them. But they're going to have to win out down the stretch here. And the 3-1 series win against Cincinnati was big. Maybe not big enough because they're running out of time with 2 games to go. Number 12, Seattle. Ever since I peaked them, they've kind of fallen back to earth. 1-2 against Oakland, 1-2 against the Royals. Tough, man. They're the holding on to that last wild card spot by 4 games, I guess, against Baltimore, but they have an easy schedule. They can't keep dropping these series like they have against Oakland, against Royals. They need to be gearing up for playoff time. Otherwise, that playoff drought, we're going to see history in the making because they're on a playoff drought of history. Everyone's kind of assumed that they're making it at this point, but let's not forget, if they can't hold it down, we could see like a story that we'll be talking about for the rest of our lives if Seattle can't hold this down. Number 11, Philadelphia Phillies. It looks like to me they went on to the 11th, so the Phillies weren't able to score in that 10th inning. Overall, they've made a good outing against Atlanta this weekend. 2-1 so far. They were looking for a 3-1 and might go 2-2. But overall, this was a tough series for them, and they really came out with a couple of wins. So they got to be pretty excited about that. They split the series earlier in the week with the Jays. So against 2 tough teams, they went 500. They are holding on to that last wild card spot barely over the Brewers, and they do have a somewhat tougher schedule, but I do think they have the better team, so I'm going to hold them to making the playoffs. Number 10, San Diego trying to make some headway here. They went 2-1 against the Cardinals, 2-1 against Colorado. They hosted the Cardinals, so a little bit of a 50-50 shot there, but they've got that little bit of an edge now in the playoff hunt. I think at this rate, they should be able to make it, but they're a little bit further behind the other top 4 teams. These 2 teams are 5 and 6, in my opinion. Number 9, congratulations to the Guardians clinching today on a 7-game win streak. Went 1-0 against Minnesota earlier, 3-0 against the White Sox, and then 3-0 against Texas. Just a good week for the Guardians all around. A little shocked to see them clinch so quickly after we were talking about them last week, but with an 0-6 White Sox and a 7-game win streak for them, it's locked up. They're going to the playoffs. They're going to be hosting a first-round series, and it's going to be likely against Seattle at this rate, right? These next 2 teams have been battling hard against each other. Number 8, we got Tampa Bay Rays. They just played a huge series against, I'm going to just put them up at the same time. I'm going to kind of talk about them the same. 2-2 against each other over the weekend here. They started 0-3 against Houston earlier in the week, and the Jays went 1-1 against Philly. Just talked about that. But these 2 teams have played a bunch over the past month, and basically 500, and they're on a collision course to meet in a 3-game playoff come playoff time. So it's really going to come down to who's hosting. They're basically neck and neck at this point. Whoever hosts is probably going to win that best of 3. That's my opinion. Whoever hosts is going to win it. So it's big series for these 2 teams down the stretch right now. I'm giving the edge slightly to Toronto, but it's just straight bias and no question about it. Number 6, got St. Louis Cardinals, 1-2 against San Diego, 1-2 against Dodgers. Now, I know they're convinced they're already not number 3 seed for sure, but I was a little concerned that they lost both series against playoff-bound teams, Dodgers and the Padres. Overall, I don't know if I can see them really competing too closely to go deep into the playoffs. I think they might be able to get past that first round, but overall, the National League is very strong, and I don't see them being one of the top contenders. At least playoffs for sure a lock. They could definitely walk it. I'm not trying to discount their season they've had, but I think the teams ahead of them are definitely stronger. And these 2 teams are a little bit behind, but they could very well knock off the Cardinals because one of these 2 teams is going to play the Cardinals. The best case scenario for the Cardinals is that the Brewers somehow sneak in my opinion, and they play the Brewers because they seem to have their number for the majority of the season. Number 5, moving up a couple of spots. On a 6-game winning streak, they swept Pittsburgh. They're on their way to sweeping Boston, already 3-0, playing tonight. Yankees getting hot at the right time, and finally, I think it just took me making a prediction video of them losing to Cleveland in the playoffs to finally get on fire, and they did it. So props to them. Dropping to number 4, I got the Atlanta Braves. People have been giving me harsh time for having them so high. I think I had them at number 2 and number 3 for a long time. Finally, somewhat convinced, a little worried. They're still only 1 game back from the Mets. If they win this game, they just took the lead. It looks like in the top of the 11th. They'll only be 1 game behind the Mets. Honestly, it's these 2 teams. I'm getting to the next team, the Mets. The Mets have a little bit of an easier schedule. They're 1 game up. These 2 teams are clashing in this week coming up. And whoever wins that series, that's going to be my pick to win the division. And winning that division is going to be huge because if you don't win that division, you're going to be playing the Dodgers in round 2. So pick your poison, win that division at all costs. Realistically, I think the Mets had a good week overall. Got to be excited. Their pitching, I know people keep telling me it is better. I think the offense on the Braves is better, so you can interchange these 2 guys realistically. And top 2 remaining the same all season long, it seems like for now, for the most part. We got the Dodgers and the Astros. I don't really need to talk too much about them. I already talked about them. They swept the Rays. They went 2-2 against Baltimore. And the Dodgers went 2-1 against St. Louis over the weekend and 3-2 against Arizona. Both those teams been top of their respected conferences for a long time. It's not really anything else to add to that. But guys, thank you for watching all season long. If you've been here all season long, and if you're new, make sure you smash that subscribe button. This content's going to keep coming. I'm going to be talking about baseball playoffs. I'm going to be talking about the NFL season, the NFL playoffs. I'm going to be talking about hockey because that's another one of my passions. That season's about to get kicking off. And if you guys are into that at all or want to join further conversation, we have a growing Discord community. The link will be below. Follow me on Twitter, all that fun stuff. And guys, we will see you out there for that next video. Thanks for watching.